Yeah, this sucks. Welcome to Lolly's Winterization Guide, the one and only guide you'll ever need for winterizing your motorcycle. This may not be the only guide you ever need, but for some ungodly reason, the topic of winterizing your motorcycle is hotly contested online. Like, people are divided. First of all, you got people saying that, why are you winterizing your bike? They have no idea that some of us up north may not want to ride during certain times of the year. That was a joke. I'm sure they know. And then there are just people that take winterization too seriously. And if you disagree with them, your bike will disintegrate, turn into ashes, and you'll never be able to ride it again come springtime. Look, it's not that serious. Winterization is a pretty simple thing to accomplish. There's a few basic key steps you should be doing to keep your baby up and running so that when you want to ride him, when the weather doesn't look like this, you'll have no problem doing that. Tip number 1. Cleaning. Once you've figured out that, okay, like this is the day that I'm gonna stop riding for the season, just give your bike a wipe down. Especially if you just rode around in like salt. You basically don't want to let any of that salt sit on your bike and rust its fragile parts, especially if you have areas on your bike where the paint is already chipped off, like I have a little bit. Let me show you. Sorry about the awkward angle here, but yeah, you can see right there, there's some chips on the paint. So if you leave salt and stuff sit on that, it's gonna end up rusting. So give your bike like a quick wipe down. Make sure it's not like super grimy before you store it for the winter. Okay, believe it or not, you're like basically a third of the way there. Okay, tip number 2, figure out where you're gonna store it. If you're gonna store it in the garage, you probably don't need to cover it with really heavy anything, just maybe throw like a dust cover over it. But if you're storing it outside, it would definitely be beneficial to have something that's weatherproof. This is my Nelson rig cover that I've been using for years. This thing is waterproof. So for all the times that I was storing this bike at my apartment, I would use this. But since it's in a garage now, I don't really cover it with anything. I feel like dust isn't that big of a deal to wipe off anyway. All right, so you've washed your bike, you've decided if you're gonna keep it outside or inside, you're gonna cover it if you keep it outside with something waterproof, hopefully. Second thing about storing a bike outside or inside, like if you're in a non-heated garage like this one, you might wanna consider putting some cardboard under the tires just so that the bike isn't just sitting on the actual concrete. I've heard like mixed reviews about this because people are like, oh, if you just put it on the concrete, you're gonna get flat spots. But like at the same time, if you just move your bike 2 inches over every month, you're not gonna get any flat spots. So you can put some cardboard under the tires if you wanna be extra careful. You can not. I usually do put just like 1 layer of old Amazon boxes and I'll just let the bike sit on those. Just have a box here sitting for that specific reason. I'll just lay it on the ground and roll the bike onto it. So yeah, tip number 3, put cardboard, or don't if you want, underneath the tires of the bike. I used to complicate winterization so much. Like I feel like when I first started riding, I was like, oh my God, I don't want to make a single mistake winterizing. And now I'm like, the 4 basic steps and we're good to go. I just don't understand why it seems to be like such a contested topic online. Like so many people say different things and there's like, okay, is there really a one right way to do it? Like the next tip I'm gonna give you is gonna be a perfect example of that. But I feel like the majority of opinions of people just not being able to agree on what to do to winterize their bike is because they have different models of motorcycles that maybe need different types of TLC. Like if you have a newer bike, it's probably fine, just leave it. But maybe if you have an older model, like rust might be an issue. You might want to empty the gas tank, or you might want to like fill it up and put fuel stabilizer. I don't know. It's like dependent on the bike model, I guess. Okay, the next tip that nobody seems to agree on. When you do the oil change, you can either do it before you winterize the bike or right as you're about to start the new riding season. People are split on this. It used to be 50-50 and now it's like 70-30 according to the latest Instagram poll I put out about this topic. A lot of people just want to do the oil change when they're starting their season, myself included, because I don't want to be out here in this freezing cold doing my oil change, to be honest. If you're a mechanic, you're probably going to say, oh, but it's not good to let oil, like old oil, sit in your bike. And maybe that's true. It depends how many months you're winterizing the bike for. I feel like if you just let it sit with old oil for 3 months, you'll be okay. Personally, I like to do it at the beginning of the season so I have super fresh oil to start. Like I don't want to change the oil now, let it sit, and then start my riding season months down the line with oil that's been sitting. So it's just a personal preference. There's like counter arguments and arguments on both sides of this story. So when it comes to changing your oil, just pick whatever's convenient for you. Again, maybe if you have an older model, I don't know, do 2 oil changes if you can't make up your mind. But personally, when it comes to oil changes, I am not doing mine when I'm winterizing my bike. Maybe if you ride so much that you have so many miles on your bike and on that oil is super used, go ahead and do it. But otherwise, I don't know what to tell you. Only a semi-professional. And by semi-professional, I mean I've been riding for 10 years and I've heard like 2,000 1,000 billion people's different opinions on this matter, because I've asked multiple times on my stories, and I've gotten feedback from people who are experienced, like mechanics, and people who have just been riding for a while. Do what you want. I feel like there's no consensus on this topic. I don't know what to tell you. I have no good advice for this tip. Okay, moving on to the next tip though, that I think is universally appreciated. We got to get underneath the seat of the bike for this one. And this part of the video is kindly sponsored by Yuasa battery, the battery that I've had in my bike since 2019. Yes, this is my OEM Yuasa battery. So we've had a good run. 6 years isn't bad. Basically, I got a new battery from Yuasa, and what I recommend if you're gonna winterize your bike and just keep it in somewhere where it's really cold, my dad, who's like a battery expert, that's what he does for a living, is batteries, just recommends disconnecting everything from the battery, like anything that's hooked up to it, like except maybe like a battery maintainer. So if you have like LEDs or any other kind of stuff hooked up to the bike, just take those off. But better yet, you can actually just take your battery out of the motorcycle and just bring it inside. Once you're inside with it, you can hook it up to a battery maintainer. Yuasa sells one. I'll link everything down below. That way, if it's inside, it's super easy to just trickle charge up, especially if you're parking your bike like in an apartment complex and you don't have access to like using a trickle charger. Like, where are you going to run an extension cord from your 4-story apartment window? No. So you can just take the battery out. That's what I did when I was living in an apartment complex. Right now, the one that I bought is sitting inside, and I'm just going to replace it and put the new one on when I start my new riding season. But since I've had this battery on the bike since 2019, I can vouch for it if you take good care of it. And I do have a whole video on maintaining your battery, entire conversations with my dad, so you can go check that out if you're interested. If you take good care of it, you really can get like 6 years out of it. This battery in particular is an AGM battery, so that stands for absorbed glass mat. I could go into different reasons about why you don't need a lithium battery, and an AGM is likely to last you better because it's easier to take care of. Lithium batteries can just catch fire in the extreme cold, so topic for a different video, but if you're curious about the details, go check out the video where I talked to my dad about lithium versus AGM. So thank you to Yuasa for sponsoring this portion of today's video, and let's get on to the next tip. Okay, this tip is pretty simple, and it's a 2-in-1, and it may or may not make a difference. The first part will make a difference. Okay, on your last, or what you think is gonna be the last ride of your season, go fill up your motorcycle with fresh gas. Like fresh, premium, crispy gas. If you can find a place that sells like ethanol-free gas, even better, go get that. And then a lot of people recommend putting some kind of fuel stabilizer in the tank. If you've been around motorcycles at all, you've probably heard of Fortnite and seen the video where he tested a bunch of different fuel stabilizer, and they did or did not do anything. So it's up to you if you want to add a fuel stabilizer, just to be aware that it may not actually do anything. I don't think it can harm your bike. I just think that there's probably varying levels of benefits to adding a fuel stabilizer to the bike. The idea is that it like prevents the gas from breaking down into water and causing rust on the inside of your tank. I did find Fortnite's video on the topic super useful, so I'll link to that as well in the cards here if you're curious about checking out that video. I've used 2 different types of fuel stabilizers before. The brand I have with me now is Seafoam, but I've also used Fuel Stabil. It's the bottle that looks like this, the red liquid. I use Seafoam because it promises to do a lot of things. Whether any of these things are actually true, and it does work, I don't have the scientific measurements to prove it, so I can only trust them. Glug, glug, glug. You can be super scientific about this if you want and measure it, or you can just dump a little bit in. You would think that I, as a scientist, would actually measure and take this seriously, but no, I think I've learned that some things in life are best not taken so seriously. Winterization of your motorcycle is one of those topics. Like, I cannot explain to you, I used to have so much fear about winterization because I didn't want to do anything wrong. Like, I didn't even want to make a video or posts about it because like I knew people would get up in arms because as soon as you say something they disagree with, they're like, "Oh, woman, she doesn't know what she's talking about." I do actually. But after 10 years of riding, those people can just sit down. Okay, the next step to your winterization is that's it. There's no more steps. I don't want to overcomplicate the subject and cause like frustration and anxiety around winterization like I had. That's really what you need to do to make sure that your bike is ready for the next season. So quick recap. 1, clean the bike if it's dirty. 2, cover it if you're going to store it outside with something waterproof. If you're going to store it inside, you don't need to be that meticulous about it. Or you can use a dustproof cover. If you're going to store it on concrete, I do recommend putting something like cardboard underneath the bike, or if you want to come back and just move your bike a couple inches back and forth so that you don't get flat spots, you can do that as well. Then next, you want to take out the battery, bring it inside so that you can put it on a trickle charger and help maintain your battery and the longevity. I will linked the battery that I use in the description. You can choose the one that's model specific for your bike. After you take care of your battery, the last thing you want to do is fill up the gas tank with a fresh tank of gas. Ethanol free is preferable, and and add some fuel stabilizer, or don't, it doesn't matter. As long as you have a fresh tank of gas, you should be good. If you have any tips that you think I missed about winterization, you can leave them down in the comments and we will fist fight over who's right. I'm just joking. We're not going to fist fight. We're going to politely argue. All right, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.